Weekend is Labor Day weekend, a holiday started by the founder of the union I belong to, Pete McGuire, United Brotherhood of Carpenters and Joiners of America, proud member of Local 608 here in Manhattan. And I'd like to talk a little bit about the holiday. It's a very Orwellian holiday. What I mean by that is the real history of dissent, class struggle, our brutal labor history has been tossed down the memory hole with a holiday that is around the world celebrated as Labor Day, May 1st. But that holiday has been tossed in the memory hole. And instead we're given this bland, sterile Labor Day in September that doesn't mean anything to anybody. You might have a parade in your town. Chances are you don't. Basically, you look at it as a day off, go drink some beers, hang out in a traffic jam, that sort of thing. It's a very empty holiday. The real Labor Day, and by real, I mean a real celebration of labor, and that's what should be at the heart of a labor holiday, because people who work do create all the wealth in this world, and so it's a noble idea. But if you look at the real Labor Day, which is May 1st, and keep in mind that both these labor holidays were started in the 1880s, born out of the American labor movement, but they have fundamentally different reasons, I think, for developing. The May 1st holiday is a commemoration of the Haymarket martyrs, the 5 anarchists who were wrongfully accused and convicted of the bombing at Haymarket Square in May of 1886, eventually put to death by the state of Illinois. And it's a commemoration of that struggle, because our real labor history is a brutal struggle. I mean, you look at the history, it's workers being crushed, killed, beaten, oppressed, humiliated, intimidated, thwarted at every level, eavesdropped on, beaten, robbed, crushed by the state, by armed guards. These are the people who are creating the things that we need to exist. If you look at their history, it's sick. We have one of the most brutal labor histories in the world. It was far more brutal than what went on in Europe. Very brutal. And the real May Day celebrates it. It doesn't celebrate it, it remembers it, it commemorates it. It burns it into our mind that these things that we take for granted, like 8-hour workday, which is what the original Labor Day sprung out of, was the 8-hour workday movement for an 8-hour workday. It's remembering the brutal struggle that workers have gone through to get to where we're at, and we're not done. These things that we've won, 8-hour workday, workers' insurance, safe work conditions, on and on and on, all these things that you take for granted and may not even realize, they're constantly at risk of being taken away. Because every dollar your employer has to pay out to a stupid thing like a pension or health care or workers' compensation or death benefits because you got killed at your dangerous job, every dollar they have to pay out for that is one less dollar in their pocket. And they constantly want to take those things from us. We won those things through a brutal, brutal struggle. I mean, you look at things like the Ludlow Massacre, the Pullman strike, on and on and on, these brutal confrontations between employers and employees. And that's what the real Labor Day is about, May 1st. It's celebrated around the world. There's only, I think, 3 countries that don't celebrate it. Us, Canada, and South Africa. So, this labor holiday, it's really just an attempt to kind of, you know, forget our real labor history. But that doesn't mean that we can't use this Labor Day as a chance to, you know, remember the real struggle that working people like us have went through to get to where we're at. Why don't you work for 40 cents an hour? You know, why don't you work for, you know, $1 a day, like people in the third world? Why? I mean, think about that. I mean, it's important. Why don't you know? Why do you think that you know, you should, if you got killed on the job, that maybe your employer should be responsible? You know, there's a time in this country where if you got killed on the job, the employer didn't even, you know, I mean, get the body out of there. You know, you got hurt on the job, so what? They didn't care. You know, I mean, the conditions in this country in the 1880s, 1890s, they were just like they are right now in Indonesia and China. Just the same. Miners dying all the time. You know, we just had the case in Utah. But the work conditions, I mean, what do you care? There's always been, you know, extra people. You know, unemployment's no accident. Think about these things, because these things that you take for granted were won through a brutal struggle, and they're constantly trying to take them back. You know, so on this Labor Day weekend, have fun by all means. You know, we all work way too hard. I am a firm believer in that. You know, Americans work way too many hours. We work way too hard. You know, so by all means, enjoy yourself. You know, have a cold one. Have fun with the family, friends. But, you know, take a little time to think about these struggles that American workers have gone through. There's a reason we don't work for 40 cents an hour, and it's because of the labor movement. It's because we have this, you know, 150-year history of struggling to better our conditions. It's not, you know, we're not just born to make more money. You know, we've struggled to get to where we're at. It's been a very brutal and a very long struggle to get to where we're at, and we could lose it like that if we forget. If we let the powers that be place that history into the memory hole.